Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I have a very special knife overview and presentation, sort of a show and tell if you are new to my channel. We have two extremely special and extremely unique Francois Du Toit TF-4 knives. Now, of course, today I am wearing the gloves, and I like to remind people, especially newer people, when I wear gloves to handle certain knives, it's not because the knives are delicate. It's because the knives have finishes that would look really gross and bad, you know, especially if you've pumped your camera up to 4K, which you can do that watching my videos. You probably want to see all the detail. That detail probably does not include my my gross fingerprints. So we're wearing gloves today just so you guys can get those details while I talk about this stuff. This is not a typical knife review. These are custom knives, like every sense of the word custom. These are almost entirely made by hand, and they are super unique. And it would be pointless to review it. I did not carry these knives. I did not use these knives. That is not the type of video this is. It is simply show and tell and appreciation for something that is both tool and art. Very much art, obviously. So if you'd like to hear about these, I have some details. These knives, these beautiful works of art, were sent to me by my buddy Scott at Sierra_bound on Instagram. He has an amazing collection of knives and is part of the reason that I get to share some of these awesome knife makers. Actually, Francois Du Toit out of South Africa is a knife maker that I never would have known about if it wasn't for Scott. I own one. You guys have probably seen my TF-4, which I very much love. It's one of the most cherished knives in my collection. And I can tell you, if you don't want to go back and watch that video, this is some of the best work that I have experienced dollar for dollar in the custom knife world. Obviously, what we're looking at here are multi-$1,000 knives, and I don't know the exact costs. I didn't even ask Scott, but I can tell you that a custom from Francois Du Toit is obviously going to cost you quite a bit of money. Mine in particular was over $2,000, so these are going to be more. And if that's something that doesn't interest you, that's fine, right? It doesn't have to. These knives are not going to be for everybody. The custom knife world in general is not going to be for everybody, but that's just factually the case. As far as custom knives go, I've handled quite a few now. This being my 7th year as a full-time YouTube knife reviewer. Actually, I haven't been full-time that long, but I think 4 years full-time. Seems longer than that though, right? I can tell you after handling as many custom knives as I have, Francois Du Toit has some of the best dollar for dollar work in terms of quality, action, just the overall satisfaction that you get with these things. Some of the best work that I have experienced for the money. So obviously, you know, you can get a substantially less expensive functional tool if you're just looking for a knife. I have a playlist of cheap knives I like with 250 videos that'll be right up your alley. But for people looking for something like this, specifically in this custom territory, yeah, Francois Du Toit, some of the best that I've ever experienced for the money. So definitely check out his Instagram for sure. I believe it's FDT Customs. Thanks so much to Scott for sending these in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This is really hard to pick up little pieces of paper while you're wearing gloves. So we're going to do these one at a time so that the camera can focus on them. And like I said, this isn't a typical video, so it's not going to include everything. But what we have here is a, this is the front flipper. Scott just has this listed as FDT1. I'll be honest with you, I have my cheat sheet, which is my iPad over to the right that has all the information here. But this one is a front flipper. It's very similar to the one that I have. The scales are made from Mokame. I always say Mokame Gain. I know, right? Apparently it's Mokame Gane. I had a guy get really, really upset with me about not pronouncing it correctly. So sorry, one guy who I can't remember your name. But I'll try to pronounce it correctly from here on out. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. That's always how I've heard it. But this is, if you're not familiar with Mokame Gane, it is essentially kind of like this is an overly simplified definition or explanation of it. It's not scientific at all, but it's made in sort of a Damascus of materials like gold, silver, copper, brass, I think there might be one other thing that they use there. Yeah, it's a combining of those materials to make a really spectacular looking material. And it's different, obviously. The colors that you end up getting is totally different than, you know, what we see in like titanium Damascus or zircotai, right, or these other materials. But there's also, you know, there's a fusing. If you've ever heard of mochatai, that would be a fusing of mokume gane and titanium Damascus to make a mochatai. I have an example of that in my Riat Jack 1.5. And then your zircotai would be, you know, your titanium Damascus with zirconium instead of the mokume, right? So there's a bunch of different, I mean, like a lot of different potential between these materials, but when it's just mokume gane, this is what it looks like. And it's really beautiful. This is absolutely spectacular. So anyways, to get back to the cheat sheet here, what he said exactly was, this is a Nichols Damascus boomerang. Like that's what you're looking, apparently. That's what you're looking at right here, is a Nichols Damascus boomerang mokume. I'm sorry, not the blade, the scales. So this is the Nichols Damascus boomerang pattern in the mokume gane. This is something that he apparently sourced and gave in the form of a billet to Francois Du Toit at Blade Show 2023, which is really cool. If you didn't know that, I learned about this years ago that, like, you know, some knife makers, if you have an order with them or something, if you source a material that you're like, yeah, I have this material, can you like make skills? This is pretty common, right? This has been happening for, as far as I can remember. I remember it first being mentioned by Jim Skelton in a video I watched like 14 years ago. Yeah, that's what he did. He said, I then asked that he source Thor Damasteel. So this is Thor Damasteel. Let you guys take a look here at the Thor Damasteel pattern, which is kind of hard to take a look at here because we have what I always refer to as a zero etch. Essentially, the entire thing has been polished. So it was, when it was etched, they let it sit on there long enough to eat into the less corrosion resistant of the compositions to create depth. And then instead of doing your, you know, etch where you have the dark parts and the light parts, they just polish all of it. And the reason that you can see it is because there's depth, slight depth between those layers. Personally, I love how that looks. That's exactly how mine is. Mine's a Damacor, but it can be done with Damasteel. I have another example of Damasteel being polished like this in it's an Evo Typhoon, like a production Evo Typhoon. But I love this. I think it looks so good. And the etch stuff looks good too, but I just really, really appreciate this. I'm kind of a guy who likes the shiny stuff, right? People tend to either like it or not like it. I like the shiny, the polished stuff. Anyways, the Thor Damasteel, he says, is my favorite pattern. From there, I let him do his magic, which I agree with. There's certain elements, obviously, you want your own thing with a knife, you know, but if you're ordering a custom knife, I think it's important to, at some point, let the knife maker do their thing, because they are, I mean, they're the reason that you want it. So letting them work their magic and not being super micromanagey with a custom knife project, it will almost certainly result in the best possible results. So obviously you want to pick your elements there and get it the way that you want it. But at some point it's like, hey, you know, do your thing. Obviously Francois knows what he's doing. And while he said, to continue that sentence, and while I believe this is the first knife he did in mokume, it's the best finish of mokume I've ever seen. I have never seen a finish of mokume that looks quite as impressive as this. This is spectacular. So we obviously also have a polished Damasteel backspacer and pocket clip. I'm going to guess that it's Damasteel, just because, like on mine, the backspacer is literally Damacor, and then the pocket clip on mine is also Damasteel. So I know that this is something it works with, but I love that this sort of zero etch is also applied to the pocket clip. If you're unfamiliar with Francois Du Toit knives, these are, outside of like little things like the holes that are cut for the screws or the pivot, which are done by a machine. I would be shocked if they weren't. But I mean, like that's where you really need like absolutely perfect tolerances, because otherwise the thing is just not going to operate perfectly, right? But everything else, including sculpting of the scales, is done by hand. All of your polishing, all of your finishing, this is all done by hand, which is really, really amazing. We have different definitions, like, depending on who you ask in the knife world. A custom knife, to me, doesn't necessarily have to be entirely handmade, but it certainly does need to have custom elements and have a large amount of hand processes. Basically, the knife cannot be something that is able to be mass produced. It's going to have to be something that requires a specific amount of human interaction, right? A person, a human being has to focus on this one knife as sort of a project, even after certain pieces might be cut or certain elements might be cut by machine. By my definition, that's still a custom knife. And, even if I was in a stadium full of, 40,000 people telling me otherwise, I would stick to that. That's just my own personal definition. Other people will say it can't be a custom knife unless the entire knife is handmade. And I think that's also okay to define it that way. What some people will say, unless like every last little detail, including the holes that are cut for the pivot and screws, are handmade, then it's not a custom knife. And I think those people are just looking for something to complain about. I don't think I think that's ridiculous. I personally would want the operational parts of the knife to be cut, ultra precision by machine, so that everything would function exactly the way that it's supposed to, but whatever, right? People are going to think what they're going to think. This is, by the vast majority, the people who know what they're talking about, the vast majority of people are going to define this as a legitimate custom knife, and it is really, really spectacular. These knives lock up perfectly solid. They are unbelievably smooth. They have amazing detents. We're going to see even a better example of that in the next one that I'm going to showcase here. And the fit and finish, especially considering these pieces are finished by hand, right? The fit and finish on this is absolutely insane. It is really, truly spectacular. This is the type of knife, knowing for sure that this is handmade, it's the type of knife that I would assume was made by machine. That is really spectacular work. Truly, it's other than it just having that magic sauce, that indescribable glassiness that comes with a handmade knife, right? You handle something that's ultra precision made by a Chinese OEM, and it's, wow, that's really impressive. And then those of you who know, you handle something that is custom made by a true craftsman, right? Somebody who is obsessed with getting all the little teeny tiny details correct. You would think that the ultra precision all machine made knife would feel better. Somehow it doesn't. Somehow stuff like this feels impossibly more accurate and more perfect. And it's one of those things that until you experience it, people are going to be skeptical. But people out there like Francois Du Toit are obviously showcasing this master craftsmanship consistently. These are, I'm really happy to say now, after having handled, I think this would make 4 or 5 of these that I have handled now, and they are all exactly the same in terms of fit and finish, in terms of your blade centering, in terms of your, detent on the front flippers. And I've only handled one flipper, but your cutting bevel, right? Like your final cutting bevel at the edge, is always so perfect and just so amazing. I'm just really, really impressed at not only the quality, but the consistency with these knives. Really, really spectacular. I think, we're 13 minutes and we should probably take a look at the other one here, which is, this is definitely the showstopper. So this goes beyond, this is like a super custom. This would be like beyond your deluxe, because this has some really special stuff in it. Like the layers of this onion are plentiful. We're going to get that blade out here in just a second, but let me read this paragraph. I don't want to stumble through it the way that I did the first one. FDT TF-4 number 2. This is one of 2 pieces at Blade Show 24 that I consider best in show. The other being the engraved, and then it says at A2 Knives A6, also South African custom knife maker. I recently posted as well. This TF-4 features a mirror-polished Grosserosen. The word is spelled Grosserosen. Grossrosen. Probably. Grossrosen. You let me know how to pronounce that word. Anyways, a mirror-polished Grossrosen Damacor blade. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at it. It's the finest Damacor I've seen with its distinctive pattern. I would agree with you. I've actually never seen anything like this, and I've handled quite a bit. Not as much as Scott, but I've handled quite a bit. I've never seen anything like this blade. But to top it off, Francois had Armin Winkler, who uses a hammer and chisel, in parentheses he said, total old school, fully engraved the M315 stainless steel scales. Yeah, these are stainless steel. We'll get to that in a second. The clip and the backspacer. He chose stainless steel over polished titanium to assure a mirror finish because titanium will dull over time. The inlays are a mixture of 24 karat gold, copper, and platinum. Simply astounding work all around. That is an understatement. Let's take a look. And I want you to keep in mind, guys, this is hammer and chisel. Hammer and chisel! Oh my gosh, sorry. Look at this. Look at this. And if you're wondering, yeah, the pivot is also, it's also like incredibly thin layers of, it's most likely a damaged steel in and of itself. But yeah, hammer and chisel, stainless steel, and then inlays, gold, platinum, and did he say silver? No, 24 karat gold, copper, and platinum. This is absolutely gorgeous, right? These are, we don't see these elements typically on, you know, like your typical custom. I have some really cool custom knives. I don't own anything like this. I don't own anything like this. This is bizarre. Take a look at the backspacer here. Can you believe that? I mean, oh my goodness. I love these little tiny details. Not everybody loves these little embellishment or these little, you know, these little details, these little micro details. But I do. I think that they are just so cool. For some people, it's really hard to understand why you would want to embellish a simple cutting tool like this. Some people, you know, if you're watching this channel, you have a fascination with pocket knives, right? So I'll say this. If you're watching this channel right now, whether or not you agree with the fascination or understand the fascination of over embellishment when it comes to folding knives, you're already here. The seed has been planted. It will grow. Eventually, in one way, shape, or form, maybe not with this, but with something else in the future, you'll find something that does catch your eye, that is embellished. And then and only then will you understand, right? It has to appeal to you for you to appreciate it, for you to care about it, for you to want to seek out more of the same thing. It's the story of all of us, at least all of us who are watching this video right now, right? Because it means that somewhere deep in your subconscious, you have some interest in some element of this, right? But anyways, the pocket clip by itself, I mean, the pocket clip is just, it's too spectacular. Not in a bad way, just really, really spectacular. This is the reason, you know, I've kept the lighting the same on this channel for a long time. And the reason I've never changed it is because I feel like the light captures stuff like this perfectly. A lot of people ask me what camera I'm using. It's literally my phone. It's not even the newest Galaxy. It's a Galaxy S23 Ultra. I don't have any special settings. I'm literally just pushing record. I mean, it's recording the highest definition possible, but it's the lighting that is allowing me to capture this detail, right? And if you have it cranked up to 4K at 60 frames per second, then you're experiencing as close as you can to, you know, reality with me here. But it's really spectacular stuff. I know you guys are like, okay, get the blade out. So this is a flipper. Oh. Number one, I gotta get another one of these. I said when I've got mine, it wouldn't be the last, right? Wouldn't be the last one. But my next one's gonna be a flipper. I love this knife as a flipper. The front flipper is great, but I really want a front flipper. Look at this Damacor. Think about the implication of these little islands of material here. I've never seen anything like this. This is just absolutely wild. So this would be, Damacor is proprietary. It's from the Damacor company, right? And they have two different versions of Damacore. They have the Performance Damacore, and then they have their standard Damacore, which is still a very performance-oriented composition. It just has a different core. So the outer jackets of Damacore are made of Damasteel, which in and of itself is a very performance-oriented dual composition, right? Two powder form compositions, PMC27 and RWL34, would create the Damasteel. So they use that as the jacket. And in the core, which you can actually see right there, squiggly wiggly going out to the tip, the core on the performance stuff is Damacore's own proprietary version of Vanax. I don't know exactly how it differs, but from what I understand, it's essentially the same thing. Or if you're trying to accomplish an incredible finish throughout the blade, you would choose the other version of Damacore, which is the RWL34 core. So you have RWL34 and PMC27 jacketing a core of an additional RWL34, right? And RWL34 is a composition that's used often in custom knives because it has great balance, right? It's going to be very similar to CPM 154, which is a very well-balanced composition, something that we see a lot in user steels. But it's also very friendly when it comes to applying finishes, grinding and applying finishes. So this is a really, really nice balance, right? It makes it a little easier on the custom knife maker, but you're still ending up with something that's very, very performance oriented. Your performance Damacore, which I've showcased before in one of my Herman knives, it's a Herman Dragonfly. The core will not polish up like this. It just doesn't look the same way. You're going to have like the dark areas and the light areas. And if you prefer that, then that's totally okay. Because you can still get a decent polish on it, but it's just not going to come out exactly like this. But for those people who prefer that, then great, double bonus. But from what I've seen, the RWL34 it really polishes up well. So, and that's what mine is too on my TF-4. But this is absolutely stunning. A lot of people don't like the FDT on there and the IKBS. I don't mind the FDT, but the IKBS is like, oh man, that probably shouldn't be on there, but okay, it is. Either way, I think it's something that I think it's really sad that people will be, and a lot of you have already done it. Go down into the comments. Instead of just appreciating the fact that we have this amazing work of art, somebody out there is actually capable of creating this knife, right? Instead of, complimenting the fact that that is the case, that you're looking at something that really is special, some people, just are constantly looking for something to criticize. And the only reason that they spoke up at all was to point out how much of an eyesore that is. And to those people, I would say, maybe balance that out a little bit. I'm not going to stop you from having your opinion because obviously I get it. I get why you think that, right? But if that's the only thing that you commented, you got a million other things to appreciate here, right? And you're going to isolate that and make that your only comment, come on. It's really sad that social media has programmed a lot of us to just do that all the time. So at this point in the video, the vast majority of people who started watching are no longer here. It's just people who are here for the long haul. So if you're here at 23 minutes, go down into the comments and see, how many people have said that. Because it's really sad. This is special. Whether or not that is on there or not, the whole thing is just incredibly special. There's way too much here to appreciate, right? So I don't want to get caught up in the weeds of that. But really beautiful, just incredible work here. Both blades have incredible action. I just really like the detent and sorry, my glove gets caught in that little slot there, right? But your centering, like I said, on both blades is always absolutely spectacular. There's no detent lash or anything. This is, everything that you could want. These knives are truly everything that you could want in custom knives, whether you want a front flipper, or you want a rear flipper. If you're looking to create if you're a custom knife collector, you should definitely have one of these in your collection. If you don't, in my opinion, if you collect in this territory, right, between 1,000 and 5,000, if that's your sweet spot, right, which I know is not a lot of people, but I know that there's a ton of you who watch my channel for sure. Out of the nearly 700,000 subscribers I have, I can tell you that there is a huge population of people who watch my channel who regularly collect knives in that territory, right? So if that's you and you don't own one of these, you definitely should. you would be doing yourself a favor to pick something like this up, right? If you are somebody who's never ventured into this territory and you're considering spending money and getting, your one ultimate custom, right? Careful, it's a slippery slope. This is a good one. This is a good one to go with. This is one of my top recommendations to go with. So absolutely, especially considering you can clearly kind of work with a wide variety of materials and just make them look incredible. So I really enjoy doing these show and tell style videos with custom knives. I don't get a ton of opportunities to do this, but there are not a lot of channels on YouTube that showcase stuff like this. So I like to take opportunities whenever I can to look at various makers and some of the wild and crazy things that they create, because that's a large portion of what makes the knife world so interesting to me. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer. I would imagine Francois Du Toit will be down in the comments section at some point, maybe to clarify some things or to, kind of chime in here and there, which would be cool. Yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun to do. So thanks again. Thanks so much to Scott for letting me look at this stuff. Obviously, I don't get to keep these. These are going to go back to Scott. Anyways, please make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'm just going to show it. I'm not going to lay this down on top of that. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.